views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk. Tonight's guest has taken an additional step in the widespread Bronx opposition to citing a jail in Mott Haven. He thinks that first the city ought to close the so-called jail on a boat. He's also been a front and center supporter of major South Bronx development projects, and his position as the chair of the City Council's Land Use Committee puts him front and center on those and many other vital issues in the Bronx and across the city. We'll ask him about all of those things and more tonight. Please join me in welcoming back to BronxTalk the council member from the council's 17th district. And in case you don't know, that includes Bronx neighborhoods of Concourse Village, Hunts Point, Longwood, Melrose, Morrisania, Port Morris, West Farms, and more. Yes, he's also the chair of the council's Land Use Committee. Long-winded way of saying welcome back to Rafael Salamanca Jr. Nice to have you.
Gary, thank you for having me.
Let's just start right away with the jails. Now, you have been a supporter of the idea of closed Rikers. If I recall, you were one of the first people on board. Let's start with that and the process that led, or lack of process maybe, that led to the mayor picking that spot in Mott Haven. Your thoughts about that particular, and then we'll get into the jail on the boat.
Well, Gary, you know, when I first got elected, we were having conversations to raise the age, and I have the Horizon Detention Center in my district. The administration wanted to get my input in getting the 16 and 17-year-olds out of Rikers and bringing them over to my district. So they gave me a tour of Rikers, and immediately when I walked
when you say your district, what do you mean?
Well, so I have the Horizon Juvenile Detention Center in my council district.
Right.
And so the goal here was to get the 16 and 17-year-olds out of Rikers and bring them and transfer them over to this Juvenile Detention Center, which I am in favor of. After my visit to Rikers, and I saw in the conditions that these 16 and 17-year-olds are living in inhumane conditions, they did not belong there. I immediately told the administration that they will have my blessings. I also immediately saw the conditions that everyone else is living in.
I was going to say, why nobody should live like that.
And so with what I experienced, with what I saw, coming back to my district, having conversations with different individuals, but most importantly, having conversations with the advocates, the closed Rikers advocate, immediately I joined their corner and their push to shut down Rikers. And so in conversations with the administration, you know, the mayor was opposed to it. You know, he was dodging and weaving, if we can say the least. Immediately after there was a good push, the mayor came on board and he came out with this plan, this 10-year plan to shut down Rikers. The numbers would have to be reduced to 6,000. And the mayor felt that that would all happen within a 10-year span, and he would open up 4 smaller jails throughout all 4 boroughs, excluding Staten Island. And so there were conversations as to where were the sightings of these jails, where would they take place. Well, on one particular day, the night before they make the announcement, I get a phone call informing me that the mayor has decided to open up a jail on the tow pound on Concord Avenue, directly across the street from my district. There was immediate opposition from me. In terms of... You said,
essentially, what, are you kidding?
No, this is not going to work. There was immediate opposition from me on this location. First of all, there was absolutely no community input. You know, the administration just decided to pick a site, say this is where we're gonna house this jail. not knowing that there were plans, years of making in terms of plans from the Diego Beekman organization as to how to bring housing to that particular site. But just the total lack of communication from the administration really rubbed me the wrong way.
And so, if I can just interject at this time, so this idea that you had originally of moving some of them to the Horizon Detention Center, that all of a sudden was off the table?
No, the transferring of the 16 and 17-year-olds
Was still on the table.
is still on the
Okay.
table, and it will still continue.
But so let me ask you this: in the whole notion, you knew that somewhere there had to be replacement jails. Unfortunately, we still have people who need to be incarcerated. Where in the Bronx could you, or did you say it would be okay to have a jail? I can't think of a neighborhood in the Bronx that would say, sure, why not?
There would be opposition across the board. The most appropriate location to have this smaller jail would be near the courthouse on Grand Concourse on 161st Street. There are various locations in which we have recommended to the administration that they should look into, and that's where it belongs. One of my main reasons to objecting to this tow pound is within a 3-mile radius, there would be 3 jails: the Horizon Juvenile Detention Center, this proposed jail, and the barge that's in Hunts Point that does not belong there. And so that is one of my main reasons to oppose this plan. And I did remind the mayor that this would go through a land use process, and it would end up in my committee, and I would be a no vote on this process, and I would rally my colleagues to vote no as well.
So just cutting to that chase, you're saying, because you and I had this discussion on this program in the past, that if a home council member was for it, now this is not quite in your district, right? It's
This
Diana
is, yes,
Ayala's district, and she was one who was a moderate vote or a moderate voice on the siting of this jail, just to be clear to people.
I was very clear that we defer to the local member, but members do not have veto power. This particular, we're not talking about housing. We're not speaking about bringing in a shelter so a certain community. We're talking about a jail. We're talking about a facility that will house detainees for long periods of time. We're talking about a location where there was no community input. And that's what was lacked in this process.
The speaker, if I can follow what's been out there, the speaker has basically kind of wait and see, if I can understand that. And the mayor has held pretty strong. I want to move to other projects. Where are we at now with that? And then let's talk about that Vernon C. Bain Correctional Facility.
The speaker has had conversations with us, and he has publicly stated that he's not set on that location.
That's right.
He's asked the Bronx delegation as a whole, assembly members, senators, and council members, to look at various locations. Sites were given to the administration, and we're waiting for the administration to come back and give us proposed plans as to what sites are more appropriate close near the courthouse.
So very quickly, you became the chair of the Land Use Committee in January, and very quickly you somehow found yourself in the middle of not only a citywide controversy, but a controversy in your home borough. Kind of interesting. But now let's talk about this floating jail, which, as I understand, was put together to get overflow from Rikers. You think that has to go first, I guess, for the reasons you already stated, that we have potentially 3 in that part of the Bronx? Is that?
The Vernon C. Bain Center came in 1992. In 1988, Ed Koch was mayor, and there was an overflow of detainees in Rikers Island. They hit their peak, 21,000 detainees. And so he ordered this floating jail and promised the community that it would be a temporary siting. It takes about 2 years or 4 years for the jail to actually come. Now it's 1992. And David Dinkins is mayor, and he promises the community that this would be a temporary thing until they reduce the numbers in Rikers Island. Well, 26 years later, there's less than 9,000 detainees, a jail that has capacity for 15,000, and this 800-bed jail is still in Hunts Point.
If you do close it, is there going to be the same question? What do you do with the inmates who are going to have to find a place to go?
Well, it's obvious. What we're asking the administration is to close down this barge, which the last Democratic mayor, which was in office prior to Mayor de Blasio, made this commitment to the community. And therefore, we're asking that they take the detainees, send them back to where they were originally from. You have to remember that the barge is an annex of Rikers. It's not a separate, it is a continuation of Rikers. Therefore, they should transfer them back and they should sink the boat. And that is the messaging that we're giving here. This barge should be sink, and this piece of land must be given back to the community.
Is there a time frame, or at this point is still dialogue?
And having conversations with the mayor was so frustrating here.
Yeah, you know, just as you said that, I was watching your face, and you were just...
it's just frustrating because the mayor can really make a difference here. You know, this can be his legacy. The mayor, in his conversations with me personally, he says, we will close the barge, but at the end of the process. 10 years down the line is too long. Mayor will not be mayor 4 years from now.
And then you'll get a similar thing with a promise that you can't hold somebody accountable. You, according to the rules, would not even be a council member at that time.
Well, 10 years from now, exactly.
Right.
10 years from now, I would not be in office.
Right.
And so I am demanding that the mayor keep his promise from his predecessors and sink the boat.
You participated in a hearing about NYCHA, and this was, and I thought you asked really what is a logical question. So if you have any entity and the entity is not getting the operational job done, in this case, making sure people have heat, making sure there's no mold, I mean, all these other things, you and your colleagues asked the question, who's managing this property and by what process do you use to make sure the jobs get done? And I guess horrifically the answer came back, there's no process, there's no plan. Talk to me about NYCHA and what you've experienced and what your hopes and long-term ideas are.
Gary, NYCHA is broken. We're talking about a $3 billion a year agency, and they are broken. I have the third largest NYCHA portfolio in the city of New York. I have a little under 6,000 units of NYCHA apartments in my district. And what I've seen walking through the hallways, going door knocking, asking for their vote, it has been inhumane to say the least in the conditions that they're living in. And I fault the property manager. I fault NYCHA for the mismanagement of these units. Now, we understand that there's a $25 billion capital need to fix NYCHA in terms of the roofs, the elevators, the piping. Some of these developments are decades old, and with that comes having to put capital investments. But the basic maintenance of the apartments is the responsibility of the property managers and the caretakers. And I asked a very simple question. How often do you perform a performance evaluation on your property managers? And the answer was, they don't. Neither do they do it with their employees.
I'm sorry for laughing because it's not funny, but any organization needs to be managed, and it clearly was not.
There is no paper trail on property managers or employees if they're doing their job or if they're not doing their job. And they blamed it on their collective bargaining agreement. They blamed it on labor. The very next day, labor calls me and says, Salamanca, there is no language in our collective bargaining agreement that prevents NYCHA from performing performance evaluations on their employees.
Does this predate the current mayor? Does this, where do we draw the line? You've already listed the mayors, whether it be Dinkins, Giuliani, Bloomberg, or de Blasio, or even before that.
I cannot say when this collective bargaining agreement was signed. I do know that there's one coming up now at the end of May. I asked them, and it's on the record. And I purposely requested that I asked them that this be put as part of the contract. And I went a step further. I submitted a piece of legislation that has not been presented at stated yet, which would require all NYCHA employees to have an annual performance evaluation.
I'm laughing. Every employee everywhere should have an evaluation. So many projects to review. Two that you have come right out on, La Peninsula, talking about closing of jails. Spofford has been long gone. This you see as a good thing for Hunts Point.
I'm really excited about the peninsula. To know that I worked on that project from the inception. I was a district manager for that community board when they closed it down in 2011. I was DM. I was there in the conversations of what should we bring, affordable housing, light manufacturing, the amount of jobs that it would create, and I was there at the very end as the local council member and the land use chair to approve this over 700 unit, 100% affordable housing that we will bring to the community. I'm not talking, notwithstanding the job creation and the open space that we are bringing to this eyesore that existed in our community for decades.
The word has to be asked. We're going to talk about gentrification. Many people are worried. In fact, I saw a video, a very impassioned video of somebody who kind of watched people touring that old Spofford facility and said, here they come, they're going to move us out. Are you concerned that this project will move people out, change the nature of rents, and people who are on the low end of the scale will get displaced in some form?
Absolutely not. The beauty about this project, Gary, is that local not-for-profits are partners in this project. So you have The Point, you have Urban Health Plan, La Peninsula will remain there. They would get a new facility. Kelson Baskin, who is a caterer in The Point, he'll have space there. Spring Bank will have space there. The Bronx Beer Hall will have space there as well. But and so that is the intent, to have local organization and local businesses to partner and have space there at this facility. But when we're speaking about affordability of the units, I'd made sure that we had mixed income. There was a homeless set aside. There was also the units set aside for low income, and the working class families. So we're talking about individuals coming out of the homeless shelters who are ready for independent living. There will be units available for them. We're talking about individuals who are making as low as $16,000, $17,000 a year will have access to these units, up to families making $90,000 a year. Gary, we need to remember, my community, I represent one of the poorest congressional districts in the nation, and I understand that. But we also have working class families. We have mom making 40, we have dad making 40, with 1 or 2 kids, a family of 3, a family of 4. That's $80,000 in a household. And we need to make sure that we protect them as well, because they want to remain in this community. So when we're talking about displacement, we must always look at the different layers, the different incomes that exist in our communities, and ensure that they're all part of that plan.
When you step back from this, it sounds like you're prepared to say, this is how development should be done. You're proud of this. You think this is a model for what could be done in the Bronx and the city of New York.
Gary, I've been in office for 2 years, and that has been my model, and over 4,000 units of affordable units that I've brought into my district. And as land use chair, I've had many conversations with my colleagues, convincing them that this is the model, and I'm seeing that they're taking this trend. Mixed income is the way to go. That's how you preserve communities.
Well, one project that BronxNet has particular interest in, and it's another one in your district that I know you are excited about, a recent groundbreaking, and that was for La Centrale. Similar enthusiasm?
Excited about that project. That was the first project that I approved when I came to office. Well, one of my first biggest projects. Over 900 units of 100% affordable housing. Actually, when I came in, I stopped the project briefly. I felt that project could have gone deeper in affordability. I wanted to see more 30% AMI units for the low income. Mm-hmm. And I was able to get the percentage that I wanted for my low-income families. You're gonna have the Y, in that
and
facility.
I'm waiting for the drum roll for you to say BronxNet television.
And BronxNet will be there as well. But the beauty about the Y.
I have to interject.
Yes.
Aside from the housing, when you put a YMCA there, and then you put a facility like not this one, but another BronxNet facility to empower the community to make videos about themselves. I mean, we know about all the things that BronxNet does. That's, to me, the best part of development, aside from the physical housing. I love it.
Gary, you're absolutely right. When you bring projects, of that magnitude, and you're able to bring in local organizations such as BronxNet into the project, you know that the Bronx is growing because you have capacity. There's a need for another facility. Now, just to get to my point about the why is not something that's common in the South Bronx.
Oh, that's for sure.
And there was a concern about affordability, and therefore I have a commitment from the Y that there would be a certain amount of, I can say, spaces for my low-income families where there would be a very little cost or zero cost
Or
for the,
scholarships or
for the
things
services
like
that they
Wow,
would provide.
Wonderful. I want to ask about a couple of things, maybe not so easy to applaud. The property that Somerset and Shatreat had at the southern tip got sold, frankly, by surprise to a lot of people. Are you concerned about the new people coming in to manage that property, or is it wait and see at this point?
I haven't met with them. Waiting. I'm waiting to hear from them and have a true conversation. And I will, again, defer to the local member in that project. But I believe in, trying to bring in as much affordable housing as possible and bringing in mixed income, my low-income families and working-class families. So I will work with my colleague.
So just if I can interpret what you're saying, so that deal was cut before you were a councilman, certainly before you were land use chair, much like you had input into the other projects. Maybe you'll have a little more input into this, change the nature of it that other Bronxites might like, right? Am I guessing right?
I'm looking forward to meeting with the
having the
developer
dialogue.
to see what their thoughts are moving forward.
Moving right up the Harlem River to the Bronx Point plan. Many people are excited about the potential for a hip-hop museum,
Yes,
which of
yes.
course is something we've wanted for a very long time. But parks advocates were concerned that this was actually parkland, and I know there's some of them still concerned that there are plans to build on what maybe they ought not to. Your thoughts about Bronx Point?
I think the Bronx Point is a great project. We're talking 1,000 units of 100% affordable housing. You're going to have a hip-hop museum, state-of-the-art, a theater that's there. And my understanding is that there's going to be some type of green space in which the community will have. Again, this project was before my time as land use chair, but I can tell you why I'm excited about this project. A few blocks up, it's my district, and I'm getting a brand new school because this project is moving in. Much needed, a school that's much needed in a community that's seeing development, but yet we're not seeing the increase in classroom seats that are coming in.
Even more controversial was the Jerome Avenue rezoning, which the City Council recently passed. You were one of those who hailed it and applauded it. There are still advocates who say, you know what? And my own analysis is, they got $1.5 million to help displacement of businesses. Somebody's going to get hurt there. I don't see any other way around it. You concerned? What are your thoughts on the Jerome Avenue rezoning?
This Jerome Avenue, as all rezonings, was a very controversial one. I know that my colleagues, Councilmember Gibson and Cabrera, worked diligently in getting the best deal possible. 4,600 units of new 100% affordable housing, 1,100 units of preserving permanent affordability. They're getting 2 schools, 458 seats each. Councilmember Cabrera is getting a new park, and there was funding set aside for tenant advocacy, ensuring that tenants are not displaced. I know that there's conversations being had of the businesses, the car shops that are there. And I'm confident that Councilmember Cabrera and Councilmember Gibson will continue to work with this industry, ensuring that if there's very little displacement, if any, for this industry.
I want to shift gears. Boy, we could talk forever about Bronx development now. You participated in a day-long opioid conference.
Yes.
The mayor has recently introduced the notion of safe injection sites. I know there are people who will look at that and say, wait a minute, you're going to give drug users safe places to do this? What are your thoughts, I guess, in general? And then more specifically, is that an appropriate way to look at the opioid problem?
Gary, I myself, in conjunction with Acacia and the 3rd Avenue bid, we put together a Bronx opioid summit. 149th Street and 3rd Avenue is ground zero for opioid and heroin use in the South Bronx, and I represent that area. I attribute that to years of opening up methadone clinics, needle exchange programs, and you have your dealers who sell heroin in the street. It's in your face what's happening here. You have individuals shooting up in hallways, shooting up in buildings. You have addicts who are dying because their drugs have been laced with fentanyl. And we can do better. The mayor, when he rolled out his plan, I will once again critique him. He did not call me to say, Salamanca, we're decided to move forward on the safe space, the injection space, and your council district is a site which is part of this plan.
Ground zero, if you will.
But 149th Street and 3rd Avenue was not the site that they chose. They chose Longwood Avenue. I came out with a public statement, and I said, while I applaud this plan, and that is the right direction to go, this location is the wrong location on Longwood Avenue, which is Westchester between Hewitt and Reverend James Polite. And therefore, I'm in conversations with that not-for-profit, the St. Anne's Harm Reduction, and the 3rd Avenue bid, who came out with a statement saying, if you're going to bring in the safe injection location, it belongs on 139th Street and 3rd Avenue. So we're looking for the appropriate location in that area.
We've only got about 30 seconds, but how do you get your voice, the Bronx's voice, in these decisions? Sounds like the mayor, so far it's strike two in this conversation, that he hasn't included us.
It's frustrating, Gary, but again, I need to continue letting the administration know how unhappy I am when they make certain decisions without consulting with the community. In terms of this decision of citing a safe injection site, there's many layers. This is just the beginning. The district attorney needs to be on board, the precinct needs to be on board, and the local council member needs to be on board. But ultimately, the State Department of Health needs to be on board, and they have not dotted their I's and crossed their T's yet.
It sounds like more to come.
Yeah.
Councilmember Rafael Salamanca Jr., it's wonderful to have you, largely because you never tell me what not to ask you, and we're going to just roll up our sleeves every time you come. We hope you come back.
Thank you for having me.
Great, it's great. Folks, if you have further questions or comments on anything you heard on tonight's show or anything going on in the Bronx, email them to us at bronxtalk@bronxnet.org. You can send us a tweet at BronxTalk or post them on our Facebook page, and we do read them on the air during a future edition of our program, or forward them to, for example, the council member as necessary. So, we'll help you out. You can check out the archives at bronxnet.org. You find Bronx Talk by following the watch menu on the new BronxNet website. We thank our producer, Helen Greenberg. Our director is William Guzman. We will see you next week.